Today we're going to be looking at the book of James, continuing on in that book, and we're going to be talking briefly about thinking about the future. We live in a world and a time where we're busy. We're continually making plans, planning about what we're going to do today and tomorrow and next week and next year, and we make goals and set targets of what we want to accomplish, and often just assume that we're making these plans and we're going to meet those expectations. We're going to succeed at meeting our goals. But today we're going to look at James chapter 4 verses 13 to 17, where James, he challenges this assumption of and calls us out on maybe looking at how we plan for the future in a different way. And he starts out, verse 13, he says, "Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them." And so as we look at this passage, and each verse he touches on different aspects of planning for the future in each verse. And so I just want to walk through that real quick. In verse 13, he says, "Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money." What he's doing, he's making a bold declaration about future planning. He's not saying that planning is a problem. I mean, we're supposed to make plans. That's how we accomplish anything, is we make the plans, we stick to the plan, and we accomplish what we set out to do. So there's nothing wrong with planning, but the problem is so many times we plan without putting God in the mix, without considering what God may want us to do. And so there's that underlying self-reliance, that independence, that we forget about God. We just make plans, we just do them. And so he touches on that in that first verse. In verse 14, he says, "Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." And so he's saying, yes, we make plans, but when we make plans, we forget to ask God into the mix. But we have to remember, we don't even know what will happen tomorrow, that we are just a mist that appears for a little while and vanishes. He's reminding us of how short life is. It doesn't matter if we live to be 8, 88, 108. It's still short in view of eternity. It's a very short time. And so he reminds us, as we make plans, remember how short our life is. And that the image of that mist, it shows the fleeting nature of existence, how that mist can appear in the morning, and as soon as the sun hits it, it dissipates. That's what life is. That's what life looks like. Our lives are not our own. We are to be entirely dependent on God, where most of the time we try to live life independently. We make our own plans and we do our own thing without giving much thought to God, where we need to be dependent upon God to fulfill the work that we want to do or the things that we want to do. Verse 15, "Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that." And so he's saying, the antidote of breaking away of, or that antidote of, for our desire to be independent, to do our own thing, to live our own life, is to focus on God. He calls us to a humble submission to God's authority. Remember, He is sovereign. He is in control of everything. He knows what is right. He knows what is happening. He knows what's going to happen. And so when we make our plans, we need to do it with that mindset of acknowledging that all of our plans are dependent upon His will. And that's where he says here, if it is the Lord's will, God willing, this will, it'd be different if they said, we're going to go to this city or that city, we're going to do this or that, and we're going to be successful in all these things. It's better to be able to say, if it is in God's will, this is what I'm going to do. And so just having that mindset of bringing God into the planning stages of what we do each and every day. Then verse 16, he says, as it is, you boast in all your arrogant schemes, all such boasting is evil. You think about that. We make plans. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to be successful. If I work really hard and I do things by the book, the way that I have laid it out here, I am going to be successful. And James says that kind of boasting is really evil, because we are ignoring God's role in those plans. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, God is always a part of my planning. But the question is he intentionally part of our planning? Now, I'll never forget a pastor friend of mine where he would, even his wife, planning their weekly meals for when they went to go get groceries. She laid it before God. What do you want us to have this week? And that would set up her grocery list. And how she would, one instance in particular, she was planning out her week, and there was one day nothing was coming to mind as to what to fix that day. Well, it ended up being that day they were invited out to dinner with somebody. So God was saying, here's what I want you to prepare all week except for this day, because I'm going to take care of you a different way. So even her grocery list was being set before God. But when we make our plans and when we boast about what we're going to do, that boasting is evil if we are ignoring God's plans. We take credit for what only God is able to do. God is the one that can bring life and death. He can bring life itself and the opportunities within that life. It's glorifying ourselves instead of God to say, look at what I'm able to accomplish. Instead, we are to be calling out to God and seeking His will. And then verse 17. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. So he expands upon, the plans that we make. He highlights this sin of omission. The fact that if we know what is right, but then we take no action upon it, that is sin. And there's responsibility that comes with knowledge as we go through each day. If we know of a situation, have the ability to do something about it, but don't do it, it's sin. And so it's so important that we put God in the mix of everything that we do, of how we plan our days, our weeks, our months, our years, and keeping Him at the center of all that is done. And so I want to look at 3 spiritual insights that we can pull from this passage. I'm sure there's many more than that, but 3 that I want to look at today. Number 1, life is short and uncertain. We have to remember how short life is. We are just a speck in scope of eternity. Eternity is forever and ever. And so our 70, 80, 90 years is nothing, just a blip on the screen. And so we have to understand life is short, it's uncertain, that God alone holds the future. Our lives are brief in view of eternity, and God alone holds the ultimate control over our existence and our future. And so he needs to be placed in that at the center of our planning. And a couple passages to think about concerning this. Psalm 39 verses 4 and 5. It says, "Show me, Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting my life is. You have made my days a mere handbreadth. The span of my years is as nothing before you. Everyone is but a breath, even those who seem secure." And so the psalmist here, he's portraying that just the nature of human life, the shortness of it, echoing what James said about the mist. Our life is just a handbreadth. It's just a short amount of time. Help us to remember how short life is. That we don't have a whole lot of time. So what do you want us to do while we are on this earth? Another passage is Proverbs chapter 19 verse 21, where he says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Again, we can make our plans, but we need to make sure that God is part of that plan making, that planning process, because we can put down what's on our hearts, but it's what God intends to have accomplished. That's what's going to be accomplished. And so this passage, it affirms what God's ultimate control over outcomes, regardless of our human intentions. We can make plans to do something, but God can change them in a heartbeat, or he can take those plans and do something totally different than what we expected to happen. And so just realizing that life is uncertain, it is short, keeping God in the mix. A question we can ask ourselves in this is, in what areas of our life are we most tempted to plan without prayer or consideration of God's will? We plan out our day. We plan out our summer events. We plan out our vacations. We plan out where we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, where we want to be by retirement time. Are we praying about those decisions? Are we praying about those plans that we're making? Are we considering what God may want? And that's the crux of this. When we plan, there's no problem with planning. It is, are we asking God to be part of that process so that we are doing his will? The planning we are putting in place is in line where he wants us to be, not just the selfishness of where we want to go, but the dependence upon God to where he wants us to go. So remember, life is short and uncertain. Number 2, we need to invite God into every decision. We need to approach all of our future plans with humility, acknowledging God's will as the determining factor. To say, this is what I want to do, but God willing, this is what will happen. But God, if there's something else, I want you to take the lead. Passage on that is Proverbs chapter 16, verse 9. It says, "In their hearts human plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." It's kind of like the Proverbs verse before. But the fact that we can make our plans, but if we have that mindset of, here are my plans, but God established my steps, each step that I take, that I'm doing what you want me to do, that I'm going in the direction that you want me to go in. It's not just for me, it is for you. And this passage, it shows that balance between human planning and divine direction. And again, emphasizing the need for humility in everything that we do. And so as we go about our days, invite God into every decision we make. And I can go back to that pastor's wife who prayed over each meal. I can't, for myself, I was amazed at that, and I still am. I don't even think about what am I going to do for lunch today. I'm just, whatever happens, I'm going to get lunch. But this godly woman literally prayed about what do you want us to have this day? And so she prayed to God even for what they were going to eat every day, talking about inviting God into every decision. But remembering when we invite God, we can make the plans, but He's going to be establishing our steps. Another question. How does that reminder that life is like a mist affect the way we think about our goals, our priorities, our worries? The fact that we are just here for a momentary time and then we're gone. How does that affect our planning? How does that affect the goals we set? How does that affect the things that we worry about? We're here such a short time, trusting in God that He's going to lead us to where He wants us to go. And number 3, knowing but not doing is sin. We need to remember that. Having the knowledge of what is right, particularly regarding God's will and our dependence upon Him, carries that responsibility to act accordingly. And failing to act on what we know is right to do is sin. That's a scary thought. But the truth is, if we know what to do, but we don't do it, it is sin. And a great example of that. 1 John chapter 3, verse 17. He writes, "If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person?" And so this verse, it illustrates the sin of omission in a practical way. The fact that you know of someone's need, but you fail to act in love. You have the possessions to meet the need, but you choose not to do anything about it. It underscores that knowing what good to do and not doing it is a lack of love, and since it is a lack of love, it is sin. And so the importance of, if we have the ability to make things happen or to help in a situation, we need to act. He's giving us opportunities to be His hands, His feet in the world around us. So if we know of a need, let's get involved and help meet that need. Question on this: what is one good thing we know God is calling us to do, but we've been putting off? What is one step you can take today to do it? There are people in our lives, there are situations in our lives, we know the good that needs to be done. Will we take that step and do the things that He asks us to do? And then just want to share 3 practical takeaways from this passage. They go along with the insights that we've just read. Number 1, we need to begin any of our planning with prayer and dependence on God. When making plans, include that phrase of, if God allows, if the Lord is willing. It's not just words that we say. It's not an incantation. Oh, if the Lord wills, this is what we are going to do. It's a genuine acknowledgement of God's sovereignty over our life and over our future. And when we do that, in our minds, if we are thoughtful about that, mindful of saying, if it is the Lord will, it will help us cultivate that humble and God-centered perspective when we make the plans that we want to do today, tomorrow, this week, this month. That we go to God and say, okay, Lord, what is it you want me to do? If you are willing, this is what my plans are. Number two, we need to speak and act with awareness that each day is a gift. Again, we need to recognize the shortness of life and the uncertainty of tomorrow. We don't know if this is our last day. This could be my last day, my last breath, my last heartbeat. Something could happen unexpectedly, and my life is done. And because if we have that mindset of each day is a gift, we need to be motivated to prioritize what truly matters in this life. Doing kingdom work, serving others, deepening our relationship with Him. That we don't postpone acts of faith or evangelism or reconciliation, assuming that we're going to have more time. We don't know how much time we have. Today could be my last day. Or we could have another 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. We don't know. But we need to speak and act with that awareness that each day is a gift. And number three, we always need to do the good we know we should do and not delay. If we realize that that God is leading us to something that we ought to do, a good deed we ought to do, we shouldn't procrastinate. Don't delay in following through. As that passage warns, that knowing what is right and not doing it, it is sin. And so let us develop a habit of prompt obedience and action whenever we have those moments of knowing the good we ought to do. Let's follow through. And let us close with just this thought. Let us embrace a humble, God-dependent life. As we are living a life that's humble to God, dependent upon Him, it will help us to avoid the evil boasting that comes when we don't put God in the mix. And may we find true peace and purpose in acknowledging the one who truly holds the future. He is the center. He needs to be our focus. Our lives need to be led by Him and not just by our own personal desires and convictions. It's based on Him. Lord, if you are willing, let us do this or that. And in whatever we do, that we glorify you, we honor you, we live our lives solely for you. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Hope you do get a glimpse of that, bringing God into the mix of whatever plans we make for each day. And the Lord bless you all. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you next time. God bless.